Alright, so let's take a look at automation tool Visual Flow and what it does in Salesforce. Okay, so like we have already seen workflows, process builder, there is one more automation tool called as Visual Flow, Lightning Flows. It's also called Lightning Flows because of the new features which is introduced along with Lightning. Basically, what happens here is it's an automation tool with stepwise actions that you can set up to implement a business process. Okay, so but we have already seen for that with workflow and process builder. So there are some different actions and couple of things you can do here. So let's take a look at this. Like flows will be triggered by user action or also can be automated. Flows are like, either you can trigger it by a user action or it can also be automated for regular processes that you want to bypass the manual intervention. Okay, flows basically can collect information from user using a screen-based flow, query the database, you can update, delete and save records on a single or multiple objects. So it's pretty, it can perform a lot of things. It can also invoke Apex classes, so you can have a full bunch of processes running, like you can get some data, check some integration call some Apex class, then finally you can process couple of records. So you can do a lot of things with Lightning Flow, and you basically design flow using the cloud designer. There is no coding here. Alright, so this is again part of the admin course where you do everything via configuration and no coding. So which are the key parts of the flow? Each element represents an action that can, so for example, includes reading or writing Salesforce, displaying information. All this you can do. Okay, there is an element. This will fall under elements. We'll look at the elements in more detail. You can collect data. That could be a screen element. That could be a query element. There could be loop element. So we'll see. So all of these things can be done. You can display information, collect data from flow users, executing logic or manipulating data. Then you have connector to connect the various elements. So what you want to do next in the next path, so that is what we do using connector. Now suppose and during the flow you want to store some values, user inputs and queries and other stuff. So you can use something called as resources. There are various types of resources which will store the data for you. Okay. So as we are saying, let's look at the flow elements. You can have a flow Apex element, we can have a plugin element. There are a lot of elements here. You can go through the list here, but actually we will build a key ones, and each of this definition is over here. So you can also call action element. You can have a loop element. So some of the important ones are record, delete, create element. You can create as object record, and you can also call quick action. Then you have something called as screen element. Yeah. So here you can store the information that the user gives you during a particular session or something, and it can be guided to a next set of screens or process. So these are some of the elements that we have. And then you have a decision element, you can send elements. Then there are a lot of other stuffs, like you can delete an element, record. So there are a couple of elements which you have. Basically it's a kind of actions which you can invoke. Okay. Then you have a resource. Now as part of this element, suppose you create a screen element, you want to store some data. So you can store it in a choice. Alright, there is a collection variable, you can store multiple records or you can store a fixed value. Then for example, if you have a dynamic, you can represent a set of choice that generated from an object's record. Any element that you have is available as a resource. Okay, any element. You can always use it in the outcome criteria, and an element is also considered visited if the element has already been executed in the flow interview. The flow interview is basically the process flow. Okay, if the element has already been successfully executed in the flow, the resource values is true. So if basically the resource value is stored, or it can be true or false. We'll see that. Alright, we'll see the example. Basically you will be storing data using flow resources. You'll have to create these resources. So these are the various flow resources. You can take a look here: formula, global constant, variables, collection variables, text template, variables, wait event, as object variable. So all these things you can store it in a resource. So basically you invoke elements. You can either store get information or perform against the database some action, but basically you'll have to store the data in the resource what you're getting from your element. Okay, or you can execute against the database element using flow resource variable. Okay, so now let's take a look at flows are exposed via flow actions, lightning pages, community page. These are the places where you can expose the flow that you create. Okay, so web tabs, lightning out, embedded services deployments. We'll take a look at basically how to expose it via the UI, the lightning pages. And you also, let's look at the flow resource. We have outcome, pick list choice, screen field. So these are a couple of more flow resources. Now, other ways where it is exposed are, you can call it where if you don't want a UI intervention to start a visual flow, what you can do is you can call it via process, custom Apex classes, REST API, web tabs, custom buttons or custom links, and visual force pages. Okay. So this way you don't need a user input to start off the flow. So these are the other ways where you want to automate where you can call the lightning flows using automation. So these are some of the use case, like say for example, when a customer call is routed in the appropriate agent based on the loan type. So these are the things. The agent verifies the loan type, gathers basic information, request information, then series of steps to process the loan application. So in this series of steps is where you can, like say for example, now the question will come up, why do I have to do this when I already have a UI? But that may not be when I already have a UI. But basically imagine that there may be a case object, like say for servicing loans, there may be like 30-40 fields. The user has to focus on maybe only 8 fields. First on a 4 set of fields, maybe first eligibility, then on the next 4 set of fields, and then on the next 4 set of fields. So this way, you can you can bring the focus to the particular fields faster and improve the process. And this happens many times. You may have 25, 30, 100 fields in a S object, but during a quick processing of a loan application, maybe you just need to feed up only 8 or 10 fields, and they will come up, and the user can take the action based on that, and multiple things can happen. Okay, so you can update the S object, underlying S object, and send an email, submit it for approval. Number of things you can do it, staying in the lightning page itself. So this is a sample example process, like say you can also submit for approval, then the loan application is approved, and agent will wrap up the loan application process. So let us create a workflow to implement this. Let us create a visual flow to implement this. Please remember that we are doing lightning flows, not workflows now.